My name is Caroline. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Program Manager Partnership Strategist with the Andrew Goodman Foundation. On behalf of this beautiful staff that you're about to see up on the screen, it's my honor to welcome you all to the Andrew Goodman Foundation's 8th Annual National Civic Leadership Training Summit. Many of you have attended our summits the last few years as we've pivoted to a virtual platform. Maybe you remember Take Your Power Back weekend in 2020, that was my first, and Rise Up weekend in 2021. This year, as we approach the 2022 midterms and face unprecedented threats to our democracy and bear witness to ongoing attacks on Black lives, our team recognized a need to use this summit to ground ourselves and our campus teams in the legacy that brought us all here, the Freedom Summer of 1964. In the height of the Civil Rights Movement, as the Civil Rights Act was under attack by segregationists in Congress, Andrew Goodman, James Earl Chaney, and Michael Schwerner set off to join the Freedom Summer of 1964 alongside hundreds of other volunteers. The Freedom Summer was a project of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to train and deploy volunteers from across the country to register Black voters in Mississippi. James Earl, Andy, and Mickey were some of the first volunteers to go out, bravely embarking on a dangerous journey to investigate the burning of a church in Mississippi. They never made it to the church. They were intercepted, kidnapped, and brutally murdered by the KKK, though their bodies wouldn't be found until 44 days later. The story of these three young men struck a public chord that contributed to the eventual passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, an act which totally changed the voting rights landscape for the following decades, but remains under attack today. A week ago today, we observed the 58-year anniversary of the discovery of the bodies of Andy, James Earl, and Mickey. Now here we all are, 58 years later, this particular group in this room, rallying to honor the legacies of people who we consider heroes, but who were just people who answered a call like any of us, who truly embodied justice and citizenship. Every piece of our two-day virtual summit has been put together carefully to honor our legacy and mobilize our network in a challenging but also deeply hopeful time. In a few minutes, we'll hear from a powerful intergenerational panel of organizers and movement leaders, including Freedom Rider and Civil Rights leader Dave Dennis Sr., Andrew Goodman alum and board member Evan Malbrough, and three of our inspiring Andrew Goodman ambassadors, Bintu, Grace, and Josh. Then we'll celebrate our 2022 Hidden Heroes from our Andrew Goodman campus teams and close out with powerful remarks from our board chair and Freedom Summer alum, Robert Masters. But first, I'm very happy to pass the mic to AGF's president and CEO, Charles Imohiason.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Charles Imohiason. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of the Andrew Goodman Foundation. On behalf of the AGF board and staff, I'm really pleased to welcome you all to the Andrew Goodman Foundation's 8th Annual National Civic Leadership Training Summit, Legacy Summer 2022. In 1964, my cousin Andy and two other civil rights activists named James Chaney and Michael Schwerner were murdered by the KKK in Mississippi while participating in Freedom Summer. The three men were all in their 20s when they were killed. Their sacrifices serve to remind us that change is never easy. It requires a strong sense of duty and responsibility. It requires hope. It requires courage. It requires struggle. And it requires persistence. At the foundation, we strive to build a community for current and future change makers. Our mission is to make young voices and votes a powerful force in democracy. Our vision is that young people will become active, engaged citizens who ensure a just democracy and a sustainable future. We activate our mission and vision through the Andrew Goodman Vote Everywhere program, which partners with student leaders, with campus administrators, and it leverages both university and external resources to provide campus-specific support to enable long-term change on campus. We select each of you, our Andrew Goodman student ambassadors, because we believe that you embody the same values, spirit, and determination that Andy, James, and Michael demonstrated during Freedom Summer. And we know that your work and the work of other students and early career leaders across the country will enable us to realize the more perfect union that the Freedom Summer volunteers sought to bring about. reflecting the core values and protections afforded by our Constitution, including justice, domestic tranquility, common defense, general welfare, and individual liberty. We salute your eagerness to embark on this journey with us. We deeply appreciate your commitment towards bringing about the just and inclusive democracy that we all deserve. With that, I want to talk a little bit about what you'll be doing with us for the rest of the week. Throughout tonight and tomorrow, you will participate in training sessions that we hope will help prepare, inspire, and empower you to enhance your civil rights and voting rights leadership, both on your campus and beyond. This year's NCLTS programming will feature engaging educational sessions on topics of equity, organizing, also institutionalization of voting rights. We'll also offer examples of successful campus civic engagement projects and campaigns. We will welcome a mix of Andrew Goodman ambassadors, Andrew Goodman campus champions, and other experts from partner organizations who will present case studies, share best practices, and engage us in an interactive problem-solving dialogue about topics ranging from the ins and outs of how voter ID laws apply to students to hearing tips and techniques for writing persuasive op-eds and letters to the editor. We hope you're as fired up and ready to go as we are for this amazing summit. Legacy Summer 2022 is made possible by the Puffin Foundation with additional generous in-kind support from Helix Sleep and Patagonia. A big thank you to our sponsors for supporting young organizers across the country. In closing, I want to share with you a bit about why I choose to commit my time to this important mission. I did not know my cousin Andy, but I did know his mother, my aunt Carolyn Goodman. Carolyn was an activist in her own right. She was also a devoted mother. And yet she supported her son's decision to travel to Mississippi, knowing full well that he might be badly hurt or worse. She did so because she believed deeply in the struggle for justice. There was, in fact, no possibility that she would deny her son the opportunity to make a difference. I myself am the father of 2 teenage daughters. They are my legacy. Some days I wake up wondering what kind of world I'm going to leave in their hands. But then I think about all the amazing insights that they have to offer, the values that they carry, and the incredible things that they're able to accomplish at a young age. And I think back to my own experiences as a student. My experiences working on political campaigns, voting rights at a young age opened a world of possibilities for me. I was lucky enough to become a lawyer, to be able to work on many national, state, and local political campaigns, including my own, to work in the Obama administration, as well as state and local government, and to lead the voting rights working group for a large multinational law firm. And I think that there is nothing better than being able to provide whatever support I can to all of you who represent the bright future of America as the next generation of civil rights leaders. And I know that our democracy needs your leadership now more than ever. In just a few months, issues like climate change, student debt, racial justice, women's health, and gun reform, issues we know our nation's young people care about, will be on the ballot. According to a recent study conducted by the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, young people will play a major role in the outcomes of the 2022 midterm elections. And we've already seen that change occur. Just this morning, and through active engagement and coalition building from the Vote Everywhere network, Fulton County election officials approved the placement of early voting polling locations on several campuses, including Spelman, Morehouse, and Clark Atlanta, impacting upwards of 90,000 students. Whether your campus is located in a community that is heading in the wrong direction on student voting rights or one that is pushing us forward, we need to hear your voice. America needs to hear your voice. Tonight and tomorrow, we offer each of you the opportunity to ask yourself, what kind of future do you want? What will be your legacy? To help us think a little bit about that question, we now shine the camera back on you so we can hear directly from your peers about what working on student voting means to them.
Hello, AGF family. I am Brandon Day, the lead ambassador at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. When I think of the meaning of the Andrew Goodman Foundation Summer Legacy Story, I think of four terms: progression, change, justices, and voter activation.
As someone born and raised in Mississippi, the Andrew Goodman Foundation legacy is both inspirational and tragic. It reminds me of all that needs to be done in my state and across the country to increase equality and access to voting. But it shows that there is a genuine national interest in making sure everybody, no matter where they live or how they vote, has access to voting on election day. And that even states like Mississippi are a lost cause.
Hi everyone. For me, the legacy of Andrew Goodman, James Earl Chaney, and Michael Schwerner mean a lot to me because it just shows the amount of challenges and successes they went through to making voting accessible for everyone.
Greetings, I am Janai Henry, a senior political science major at Clark Atlanta University. To be a part of the Andrew Goodman Foundation and its legacy is a representation of the fruitful work Andrew, James, and Chaney did in 1964. It charges me to continue to get into good trouble no matter the circumstances.
The Freedom Summer of 1964 represents a time where violence, hatred, and oppression were very prevalent in American society. However, the Freedom Summer of 1964 also represents a time where Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner were standing up, advocating, and fighting for the rights of others. I live that legacy today by doing the same thing, standing up, fighting, and advocating for others and their voting rights in both my campus and community.
Those before me risked their lives to give African Americans a fair chance in our democracy, so I feel it is only right that I continue that legacy and do grassroots work as well as legislative work to ensure we continue our progress.
How I've been continuing the journey is to making sure that everyone knows what their rights are and how they're able to vote and make a difference in their community.
I work to continue the AGF legacy by helping to register people to vote, spreading educational information about how to vote and why it's important, and by making sure voting is as easy as possible for Mississippi residents.
I am continuing this legacy on my campus by collaborating with a team of civic fellows to register, educate, and excite our students to get out to vote and enact change in their own communities.
Thank you so much. That was such an inspiring video. Hello, everybody. My name is Will Boy. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Programs here at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. And I am so excited and honored to welcome you to the opening intergenerational panel where we have some incredible speakers joining us today. This panel is really meant to serve as a look into how the past that so impacts our legacy story, the legacy of Freedom Summer, is still threading through our future and our current work right now. I'm so honored to introduce our guest panelists, so please in your homes give them a silent round of applause. First, we have Dave Dennis Sr., who was a freedom rider and co-director of the Council of Federated Organizers, or COFO, in Mississippi, which organized activists for a voter registration drive during Freedom Summer. Mr. Dennis actually spoke at the funeral of James Earl Chaney, and he worked closely with both civil rights icons Bob Moses and Medgar Evers. He is an advisory board member at the Andrew Goodman Foundation as well. We are so honored to have you, David. Next we have Evan, who is a native of Smyrna, Georgia. He is a 2020 graduate of the Georgia State University with a degree in public policy and a minor in cello performance. At GSU, Evan was a founding member of the Vote Everywhere GSU chapter and served as an ambassador for Amazon Prime student Kaplan Test Prep and GoPuff. Evan served as a summer research fellow at the United States Department of Defense at the Pentagon. Upon graduating, he became a 2020 Puffin Democracy Fellow with the Andrew Goodman Foundation, as well as a brand ambassador for Mars Wrigley and Instagram. Evan is the founder of the Georgia Youth Poll Worker Project, where he recruited 1,000 poll workers to work in the 2020 general election and the 2021 Georgia Senate runoff. Evan now works as a voting access project fellow at the ACLU of Georgia. Finally, Evan is a writer who's been published in Forbes, Teen, Vogue, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and more. Evan, we are so happy to have you. Evan is also one of our newest board members here at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us, Evan.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Josh. Josh is a student at the University of San Francisco studying politics and minoring in advertising and Philippine studies. Josh is a Leo T. MacArthur Center Public Service Fellow and an Honors College Fellow, where he has focused his academic work on the K-12 public education system. As a queer Filipinx American student, he is passionate about closing inequality gaps in our education system by amplifying the voices and stories of students of color, LGBTQ students, and low-income families. After graduation, he hopes to attend a master's program where we will continue to work with the community members and elected officials to create change for student communities. Thank you so much for joining us, Josh. Next, we have Grace Kelly, who is a senior at Miami University studying political science with a double minor in social justice studies and history. Her commitment to social change and inclusivity started in high school as a lead organizer for a protest involving over 20,000 people. A specialist on student activism, Grace works towards publishing the historical ties of Freedom Summer to Miami's campus and teaching others about the civil rights history and those around them. Thank you for joining us, Grace.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
And lastly, we have Bintu, who is a rising junior at Allegheny College, where she is pursuing a degree in international studies with a focus of the West Africa, along with a minor in Middle Eastern and North African studies with a minor in French. Bintu's passion and attentiveness in social justice and political science has allowed her to become an Andrew Goodman ambassador, a participant in Allegheny's Global Citizen Scholarship Program, and a recipient of the Philadelphia House of Representatives Award for her work in anti-gun violence in the city of Philadelphia. She also hosts her own podcast called Things Just Got Juicy. Bintu's goal as an AGF ambassador is to raise awareness about voter suppression and racial injustice, and to encourage other students, especially students of color, to vote in local elections and in their hometown. Thank you so much to our incredible panelists for joining us this evening. For the first question, we are going to be passing it over to Dave Dennis Sr. So is he still here? Hopefully. Maybe he got kicked off with the Wi-Fi.
He's on David's iPhone. I think you need to add him.
Yeah, I think I got kicked off again. It's storming here. So can you hear me?
We can hear you. Legacy Summer goes on. The storm cannot keep us out.
Right.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to hook up with my phone unless I get back on. And I want to apologize for that, but it's storming out here. So that's the second time I've been knocked off.
No problem. I think that the phone is working just fine. So if you're all right, we'll ask you the first question.
Okay.
So you were one of the freedom riders who worked to establish a presence in Mississippi, where you recognized how many Black people were unregistered to vote in the state. Can you tell us how Freedom Summer, and specifically the focus to establish a presence in Mississippi, came about as a key strategy of the civil rights movements, and what were the goals of this action?
Right. Well, when I started out with the civil rights movement, which was in 1961 in New Orleans, Louisiana, I was a member of the CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, which I became part of as a student at Dillard University. And so at the time, we were mostly involved in direct action, and which was also part of what the Freedom Ride was all about. So I joined the Freedom Rides in Montgomery, Alabama, with a group of young people from New Orleans, and there was another group of young people from Nashville, Tennessee, led by Diane Nash. And a group out of New Orleans was led by Oretha Castle and Rudy Lombard, Jerome Smith, and others. So when we got to, as you know, from Montgomery, I went to Jackson, Mississippi. I was on the first bus there, and we were all arrested, spent some time at Parchman. And when I came out of Parchman, I began to work full time for CORE as the field secretary beginning in Louisiana. So in Louisiana, it was with Shreveport, My involvement there was primarily also direct action, sit-ins, boycotts, and demonstrations. And that moved on into Baton Rouge, where we worked with the students at Southern University on a walkout. So this was in 1961. And so we all were arrested, and we got out of jail around Christmas time, got out of jail in January. And so when it came out, we had about 30 students who were no place to live, no place to stay, no money, anything of that nature is. And so we began to really have some serious discussions about what we were really accomplishing by the sit-in movement. I mean, should we not be looking at more of the political side and economic side is in terms of the basis for equality? Then looking at history, an old gentleman who was with CORE at that time by the name of Jim McCain out of South Carolina, who worked very close with the NAACP, really was in my ear about the fact is that if you want to make change, you've got to begin to look at the real power structure in the country. And so we can look at the number of Blacks who are registered to vote. And his saying was, that's where the power lies, is we have to get people registered to vote and also deal with the economic development of Black people. So looking at that aspect of it is, and we had a demonstration. It just so happened that during that same period of time, Bob Moses and SNCC has started a movement work around Macomb, Mississippi. And so Bob had heard about the students being kicked out of Southern, so he came into Baton Rouge where we met and talked about our joining movement. So I was very impressed with what he was doing there, because he had, and the SNCC group had decided to really attack the political structure of the South, which was the Democratic Party and the Dixiecrats. So I, like I recall, ended up going to Mississippi in April of 1962. And so when I went to Mississippi, about the same amount of Blacks were registered in Mississippi as well in Louisiana, which is less than 7% of the Black population eligible to vote or registered to vote. And so we began to look at the structure of how do we begin to attack this aspect of it. And one of the things we found was that what people were saying in a lot of parts of the country, and white people, racist segregationists were saying, is that Blacks were complacent, they really had no desire to. So the question is, how do we demonstrate that that was not true? And also demonstrate the real reason they weren't able to vote, and that's because of the violence, intimidation of Black people who made an attempt to register to vote. So that was the beginning of the discussions. So it was those two people who really got me to look at it, was Jim McCain and Bob Moses, looking at this whole difference. So we began to organize around getting people registered to vote. Now that was a very difficult thing. We've been lucky. We brought some mobile workers in from the New Orleans core chapter, especially, and then there was a lot of SNCC people were involved in the movement. And so the young people, in fact, most of the young people who were out there trying to get people registered to vote were actually too young to vote themselves. So they were really working with the grassroots people there to move that. One thing we found is that a lot of the poor Black people, and there was a lot of Black people who actually own property or land, and some of them own their own businesses. So there's a cross section of the movement we had there, and that was there were Black businessmen, there were ministers, there were sharecroppers, there were young people, there were elderly people. And so one of the things, and one of the people who had sort of laid the groundwork for us there was American Efforts, who had played an important role since the 50s of getting people registered to vote throughout the state. And so they had these chapters of NAACP. And at the same time, they also had a lot of leaders at the local level who were actually almost like the Underground Railroad. So that made it much easier for us to do what we did, is because we could do things that they could not do. And that is to get out there and really do the work, because without, we could be intimidated, but we were intimidated by losing jobs, what we have is about losing your life. But at the same time, that's how we began to do this work. So it's a combination of the young people who work with the elders. And so it had a lot to do with the Black extended family who took us in, they fed us, they protected us. And so it was sort of that kind of a movement, a cross section of the entire community. And then in 1960, during the 1962, there was beginning to really reactivate an organization that had been formed in statewide, which is called COFO, the Council of Federated Organizations, which was composed of all of the civil rights organizations and many local organizations throughout the state. This organization was actually organized in 1961. So some of the history says that Bob Moses and myself organized COFO, but that is not the way it was. COFO was already there. It was really organized by Aaron Henry, Carsey Hall, Medgar Evers, and some others, Tom Gaither and them. And their purpose at the beginning was to provide support for the Freedom Riders. And so when 1962, when they began to look at voter registration, we approached the leadership of COFO and decided that talking about being able to, our ability to use that structure to move a statewide effort, which they agreed to, and there was a voter education registration committee that was set up that was led by Bob and I. So that's how we get credit for the whole COFO, but it's really that committee that began to be moved with a voter registration and a voter education program that was statewide. Now then in 1960, in the latter part of 1963, early part of 1964, that's when Mickey Swerner and his wife, Rita Swerner, who belonged to the court chapter in New York, came down to Mississippi, began to work. So they weren't volunteers per se. The actual work as staff with CORE, as like the other young people, Hollis Watkins, and a lot of others, were working as staff people for SNCC. And Bob was heading up the SNCC group, and I was heading up the CORE group is. And so we, under the COFO umbrella, we became a united group is of the civil rights organization, the NAACP through Aaron Henry, Medgar Evers, and that was SCLC with James Bevel and others, and Diane Nash, and CORE with some of the CORE people that was worked there. So that's how that was formed. And so they came in, Mickey Swerner became, and Rita became, worked with George Raymond and Mario Suarez to set up an organization and basically work in Meridian, Mississippi, and in the 4th Congressional District, which included at that time Neshoba County. And they took on the move that work in Neshoba County. James Chaney was a resident of Meridian, Mississippi, and also came into, was one of the leaders there is. So he helped to organize that piece with Mickey Swerner. So that's how things got started with that whole pieces and what got me involved in terms of the faculty movement. So the whole effort there was that Freedom Summer's goal was several. One was to try to increase the number of registered votes, which we weren't that successful. When it was 17,000 who attempted to register vote in 1964, and we only had about 1,200 who were successful throughout the whole state. But in the meantime, is what we were able to do was to get this rolling. So the purpose was to increase, but more than that was to get the country to begin to understand what the problem was. The importance of Blacks becoming part of the political system, but also the difficulty in their being able to register the vote. It was because they're complacent. And that the national, and the government itself was by being complacent in this was largely responsible for a lot of the problems that we had.
Right.
So that's how it sort of got kicked off.
That's so interesting. And David, how old were you when all of this started?
Yeah, when I got involved in the movement, I was 20. When I went into Mississippi, I was 21.
That's incredible.
And the old man of the movement was Bob Moses, who was 26.
That's what's so interesting about the movement, and that its parallels to today is our students, that's probably the median age of all of our ambassadors here. So you can just see how important and how that legacy of your civil rights activism, how it started when you were in your 20s and how it's really shaped your life today. My next question is for Grace, actually. Grace, you are a student at the Miami University, and we know that Miami University played a really big role historically in Freedom Summer. Can you share a little bit about what that role was, and what does this legacy mean to you as an AGF ambassador at the school?
Yeah, thank you. So before any of the Freedom Summer participants went down to Mississippi, they came to Oxford, Ohio to undergo a week of training hosted by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, just about how to register people to vote, how to be nonviolent when they are faced with violence, and just how, excuse me, and how to aid grassroots community organizing that was already happening in Mississippi. And Miami University actually hosted that training. It was originally supposed to be held at a school in Kentucky, which backed out last minute due to pressure from trustees. So then the Western College for Women, which was absorbed into Miami in 1974, stepped in to host the Freedom Summer trainings. And that legacy of activism is felt really strongly on campus today. It's incredibly powerful to be working in the same space where Andrew Goodman and the other Freedom Summer participants once worked, because you're just walking around campus and you're on the sidewalk. And when you're aware of that history, you're literally walking in the footsteps of civil rights heroes. It's a really like strong everyday reminder of the power of youth activism. Because as you and Mr. Dennis touched on, everyone who participated in Freedom Summer was like our age. I'm 21, so Mr. Dennis was younger than me when he got involved. And they were willing to risk their lives for what they believed in. And it's really easy to get discouraged with politics when it feels like no one's actually listening to you or fighting for what you believe in if you don't have millions of dollars. So it's a really strong reminder of the power that we hold. And students at Miami today are really aware of that because I don't have the NSLAV data in front of me right now, but we had a little bit over an 80%, 80% of registered voters turn out in the 2020 presidential election. And we are an all-in campus democracy gold certified campus. So Andy's legacy is felt really strongly in the voting culture that we have there today.
That is so incredible. And it's so great that you've dedicated not only a lot of your academic scholarship, but also your work as an AGF ambassador to thread the legacy of Andy and your current work today. So thank you so much for sharing. Evan, during your AGF ambassadorship, you did many different initiatives, most notably the Georgia Youth Poll Worker Project, where you recruited over 1,000 young people to work in the polls in 2020 and 2021. Now you're one of the newest board members at AGF. I'd really love to learn how Andy, James Earl, and Mickey's legacy has shaped your civil rights leadership and your journey.
Definitely. I think, I take the legacy of Andrew, James, and Michael everywhere I go, and I think that, I think what they taught us, their legacy taught us is to be out in the front lines and to be unapologetic about what we're fighting for. Earlier today, I was actually in Fulton County fighting for precincts on campuses. And I, definitely, it was a very interesting moment for me because it used to be me yelling at elected officials and appointed officials, but now I'm like pushing college students to do so, right? So I definitely am starting to see, I guess from what David and then what Grace said, I'm coming up on the old man style for the movement because I'm coming up on 25 in November, but definitely starting to see.
Old.
I feel old. My knees hurt, but I'm definitely starting to see how the legacy is continuing in the students in Georgia. One of the testifiers at the Fulton County Election Board meeting was actually the person who took up my position after I left Georgia State in 2020. So to start seeing that continuity is definitely well. So I think what I take into it is the idea is that to be unabashed in how I look at policy and advocacy in my current position at the ACLU, but also be willing to help spread the legacy to the next generation because, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And it could be very easy to kind of get into like the political rat race of, oh, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, so I can go here, here, and here. But, what really moves mountains or really gets movement started is the idea of passing on your resources, passing on your access to the next generation. So I think that's kind of how I look at how they've shaped my organizing, because I was definitely inspired not only by other ambassadors that were here when I started in AGF in 2017, but also the legacy of James, Andrew, and Michael. And I hope that through my work and through my help, we can start inspiring the next generation to take up the mantle as well.
Absolutely. And I feel like your point and how your organizing style really touches on something that Mr. Dennis was talking about earlier, and how important the Black community was and the intergenerational community was to the sustaining of Legacy Summer long after 1964, and how what we saw in Mississippi was so impacted by seeing older folks and young folks all coming together to work towards this incredible goal. So it's so wonderful to see that that has been a shining star in how you organize. Josh, next question is for you. You know, you're a new ambassador. What inspired you to become an AGF ambassador, and what does it mean to you to carry on this legacy?
Yeah, thank you. So for me, I'm constantly inspired by the legacy of Andrew Goodman, people here on the panel today, you know, the greater community of everyone watching, but also people like my parents, like my dad. Both my parents immigrated to America from the Philippines during the Marcos regime. And when I was growing up, my dad had always made it a point to me of the importance of voting, the importance of being civically engaged, the importance of being with your community and in community. And so when I turned 18 in 2020, which was not a fun time to turn 18, I was able to get involved, and I wanted to be the most civically engaged that I could be in the height of the pandemic. And that meant going local, somewhere within my community, within the city councils, school boards, and all of those things in my local community, getting involved within the democratic process and getting people to get out and people that look like me to vote. As a Filipinx, queer American student, people like me that come from my community, that represent backgrounds that I've come from, but also in solidarity with many of the other minorities that need to be at that decision-making table, mean so much to what we are doing here and what everyone has been talking about. And so when I finally went to university at the University of San Francisco and being a part of Andrew Goodman Foundation, I've worked to help with voter turnout on campus and really engage in that way. And to kind of answer the second part of your question about what I want to carry on as a legacy, like Evan said, I want to really echo the importance of youth and our students and what it means to carry on that torch. Personally, I'm still involved within my high school community, outreaching to those teachers and government that I went to high school with and that had taught me, and talking to the current seniors that are looking at graduation about why they should pre-register to vote in California, starting at 16 years old, so they can be at 18 able to vote at the polls. Working at my current role as an intern for the California Department of Education, I also want to carry on that legacy and make sure that students in particular are at the decision-making table, at the policies, at the voting, and everything like that. And so the legacy of Andrew Goodman, the legacy of me, my parents, and those in my community, that is what I want to carry on. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Josh. Your story is really touches a chord for me, because I am very similar to you. First generation, my parents both came here from Kenya, and my mom only became a citizen 2 years ago. And they always told me how important it was to vote. And I also pre-registered to vote at 16, even in the state of Connecticut. So, it's really incredible how the legacy of our parents and their sacrifices to come to this country to give us a better life, and how important they see civic engagement is for us, how it really plays a part in our own legacy. So thank you so much for sharing. Bin too, so great that you could join us. How does Andy's legacy inspire the many forms of civic engagement that you not only do as an ambassador, but also as a podcast creator, host, and a community organizer?
Andrew Goodman's legacy as being a young person and making sure that you're involved in your community and making sure that you can contribute as much as you can in society, even if you don't have much, is something that we often talk a lot about on my podcast. We make sure to not only talk about issues that involve the American people and that involve us in our everyday lives in the United States, but also talking about issues around the world, issues that not everybody may know about. And I think that that's important, talking about things that not everybody knows about, to bring awareness to those issues and to make sure to do good no matter what. And it doesn't matter where you are in your life, as long as you're trying to help your community and as long as you're trying to make sure that you are there for people. And I think that's what's really important. And I think that's what a lot of people miss in our society, since we can tend to be very consumed in our own lives that we forget that there are other people out there who do need our help.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for all of the many things that you do to bring awareness to civic engagement, not only here in the States, but also abroad. And what does that look like for us as active citizens of the globe to really be thinking about that? So thank you for that. Folks, before we have our last question answered that I'm going to be asking, please feel free to drop any questions that you have for our wonderful panelists in the chat. We do have a few extra minutes so that we can get the most out of these wonderful minds before we move on to our award ceremony. So the last question is more asking for a piece of advice. And we're asking you as Dave Dennis, as a civil rights hero right here amongst us, what was one piece of advice that you'd give to ambassadors who in many ways are younger versions of you, looking to make change in their communities as civil rights leaders? What would you tell your younger self if you could? Oh, it looks like you're still muted. Oh no, we're missing this wisdom.
Got it. That's me. Sorry. Yeah, I think that what's important here is that it's not enough just to get people registered to vote. We're going to have to begin to look at how to organize people and using the vote, which is a tool, a piece of power. With the base of that basic power has to do with bringing people together. So what the summer of 1964 was about that piece. It's about family. The strength of the civil rights movement of Black people had to do with their family structure. And after 1964, the Dixiecrats knew that, and what they did was that's their first attack. So this whole thing about Make America Great Again has gone on for a long time. And so really, when it really took in a modern time is in 1964, they said in 1965, this will never happen again. So you had the first was an attack on the Black family through the Moynihan Report. The second thing had to do with the structure around, we had the 1964 Civil Rights Act, but what we did not look at was all of the, which I call now the Trojan horse of the civil rights movement, because you had all these activities, the poverty program and others, look good on paper, but they're really designed to really attack and destroy Black family structure. So we had an economic base, they took that. The other piece is how you broke up the community itself is. So one of those ways was what you call urban renewal. So we built the expressways or the habits right through the Black community, where the strength of the Black community was. So the attack was on that whole, what our strength was, which was the family structure, which was extended family. So like when we came in the 60s, early 60s, everybody called us freedom riders. You know, whether you were a freedom rider or not, if you came in with a pair of overalls on and say you work in the civil rights movement, as young people, we were tagged as being a freedom rider. So, and also we taught how we were able to get the community to be absorbed, to absorb us. And especially when we brought in almost 1,000 students for the summers, you know, and the community just took them in, you know, and they just disappeared in a sense. They protected them, their food and everything else. So the real heroes of the movement, in our opinion, were those people who really risked their lives even more than we did, because they stayed there when we left. You know. But today is, in terms of organizing, we're going to have to get deeper in terms of how do you begin to organize? How do we bring back the community? It takes a village to raise a child. The problem is today is they've taken the villages away. So it really has to do with the fact is how do we get this sense of community, sense of family, you know, back into the places where we live. And so my suggested advice is that we get to focus more on how do you begin to organize and rebuild communities, especially our communities and people of color, where our kids are really suffering that. And, you know, and so how do we begin to bring this back? So that's my advice is that we have this focus on rebuilding and taking over our communities, taking them back.
I love that so much. And I feel like, we're so lucky because we are a part of a community in ourselves. We're a microcosm of the community of students, civic engagement leaders. And it's so wonderful that we're able to have this space like this conference to come together, learn from each other, feel inspired, and really feel like we are a community in our own right while we go into our own respective communities on the ground. So that advice really rings true today. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. It looks like we do have a question in the chat. This is from Dr. Karen Kodrowski. This is for Evan. What advice would you give for recruiting students to be poll workers?
Ooh, okay, two pieces of advice. Lead with the money and then start in high school. So I'll explain the first one. Lead with the money. Look, I love democracy as much as the next person, but when convincing people, especially young people, to dedicate a 12-hour shift to dealing not only with voters, but also, especially in Georgia, anybody that knows in Georgia, crazy voters, you might want to lead with the money first. And then I would say start in high school. And I'm practicing what I preach. We're actually in certain states, including Georgia, you can be an election worker as young as 16, right? And you can be trained. And honestly, a lot of 16-year-olds are very qualified to be election workers because they grew up with the technology that is used to facilitate our election system. And if a great form of advocacy that we're actually employing is we're working with school districts who let their students out for election day, because election day is a federal holiday during midterm and presidential years in the state. We are actually working with them to try to get some of their students who would otherwise be off that day and just not be in school to actually serve up and work the elections. So I would say, yeah, lead with the money. And if you can, start in high school. And then also, I do have a guide on how to recruit poll workers on the AGF website.
Yes, I love that little plug. We actually just updated our resource center, and you can see Evan's guide on how to recruit poll workers right there on our website. So please feel free to check that out. And Evan, I feel like the lead with the money part is actually super important. Civic engagement shouldn't just be afforded to the few that can afford to take time off of work. And it's important, and it's so wonderful that we have funds, not only as an organization, but there are organizations like yourself who work specifically to make sure that people, especially people of color, are a part of the poll worker movement. And that's actually was one of the biggest challenges that we saw in the civil rights movement, is that there weren't Black folks at the polls. That's part of the reason why there was so much intimidation. So it's an incredible thing that we're able to compensate folks for being civil servants and doing such incredible work. Mr. Dance, looks like you came off mute.
Pardon?
Oh. Uh-oh. Looks like we have something happening with your audio. This is another question to the students. How do you think your movement and organizing work is different these days than David and the Freedom Riders was? This can be for any of our students.
I think that nowadays, since technology is more involved, we can send out messages quicker because everyone has a phone nowadays. Everyone is on Instagram nowadays. So I think in that way, it makes it a little more easier to organize movements if we have a faster means of communication.
Absolutely. Anybody else have anything else to add?
I think the faster means of communication is a great point, but I've also noticed that, there's this sense that reposting the Instagram infographic counts as activism. So getting people to show up, and also the pandemic definitely contributed to that. I'm still a little bit freaked out by big groups. So, but getting people to show up and make sure they're doing more than the technology part, I've noticed is a little bit of a struggle.
Right. We went. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to go back to the question. I think it's a very important question. How do we do this when you talk about, especially the money? which is a deep point, because as long as we depend on the money to come from the opposition, to support our movement, our work, we're not going to get it. So the question happens to be, as part of this organizing, is, how do we get people of color with money to support this movement of Black people? Rebuilding, when we talk about rebuilding the community, that is to get them to begin to invest back into the Black community and the Black youth. I mean, some of the athletes we have, can put enough money together to support a whole bunch of students to do a whole lot of work over the summer, during the year, the school year, where we have this. And they can do a lot to help rebuild communities and provide the resources that these kids have. But what can we do to get them to people with that type of resource that we need to be able to use or make that resource available to us? But we have to stop depending upon, I don't want to call it just the enemy, but the opposition for what we need in these cases.
Absolutely. I think that goes back to your point about the importance of community. Okay, looks like we have another question for you, Mr. Dennis. In the 60s, did you have a sense that you were part of something larger, something that young people would all learn about in the future? Oh, looks like you're muted again.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that what we don't have is, I'm going right back to this sense of family. We live together, we work together, and when you talk about money, we lived off of $25 a week. That you had to deal with your rent, you had to deal with food, you had to deal with stuff. But you had so much support from the people in the community. I mean, and the children in the days, in the 60s before that, children of color, were the children of the community. It wasn't about just being a child of a biological parent. So it was this whole concept of children didn't go hungry. And the people in the movement really didn't go hungry because the community fed us, they clothed us, what we have is. So how do you deal with this whole sense of community? If a kid comes to your door with his pants hanging in his, low, and say, I need help, would you open your door, and let that kid come in? When I grew up, that happened. I mean, everybody knew you. But also the sense of community is we had the resources. Our teachers live right down the street. Our doctor lives right down the street and something. So part of this whole integration piece is we left and deserted our communities and went across the track. Black people integrated, white people did not integrate. So the result of that is we are where we are now. So how do we begin to make that shift whereby we see us as a people as part of this community and family again?
Yeah, I really love that answer. And, how can you feel like you're a part of something larger when it's your entire community doing this work together? And I think that that's something that history, by the nature of history, we want to uplift a few heroes, but we know the civil rights movement was just that, a movement of men, of women, of children, of older folks, of young people all coming together. And at the time, I can totally see how it wouldn't have felt like y'all were heroes. Looking back in hindsight, we're able to see, yes, these are the few that stood up, amongst the crowd of people all doing this work together. And I think that's something that's really important that we remember in our work today. It's not important to get your name on a plaque. It's more about how are you uplifting those around you to do this work with you. I think it's really important, especially like we were talking about in the age of digital work and being on Instagram. Sometimes the person with 1 million followers, they're the ones that get the glory, when in reality, we know that it's the work of 1 million people doing all of these things together. So as a collective, I hope that we can really take your words, Mr. Dennis, to heart. Remember that it's about us as a collective doing this work to uplift young voices and votes and to make our democracy powerful. So really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, and thank you, Evan, Josh, Grace, and Bintu for sharing a little bit about what you do. It's been an incredible panel. I feel so energized and inspired to keep going with the rest of our work and our conference. Thank you all for joining us, and I will now pass it on to our staff video, which kind of shares a little bit about why we at AGF feel so called to this work. My name is Waboy Gathero, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Programs here at AGF. Today's young changemakers, like the incredible AGF ambassadors that I work with daily, give me hope for our democracy because of how creative and fearless they are to demand progress and change to make their voices heard.
Hi, my name is Gabby Pilo. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Andrew Goodman Foundation's Director of Development. As a former Andrew Goodman ambassador a decade ago, I am deeply honored to be part of a movement pushed forward by the younger generation to shape a healthier democracy. Thank you for inspiring us every day.
Hi, my name is Margaret Sasser. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Andrew Goodman Foundation's Director of Communications. Today's young people, like our very own Andrew Goodman ambassadors, are so principled, driven, and inclusive. They inspire hope in me for tomorrow because their empathetic leadership is just the change we need.
Hi, my name is Christy Smith. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Operations at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Today's young people, like our very own Andrew Goodman ambassadors, inspire me every day because they are passionate, civically engaged, and driven. I believe their voices can make a powerful impact in our democracy and initiate the change that our country needs. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie and my pronouns are she, her. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy and Advocacy with the Andrew Goodman Foundation. After the past few years that have been filled with so much stress and uncertainty, working with today's changemakers like the Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassadors give me so much hope for the future of our democracy. I am continuously inspired by the passion, innovation, and leadership coming from young people across the country, on college campuses, and in our communities. I wake up every morning because I know we all have a role to play in building a just democracy and an equitable future for all.
Hello, my name is Charles Imohiason, and I am President and Chief Executive Officer of the Andrew Goodman Foundation. My pronouns are he and him. I am so blessed to have two exceptional teenage daughters who inspire me every day. They offer so much hope for the future. Like so many in this generation, each brings her own unique perspectives, ideas, and insights into this time of tremendous change. I am fully confident that under their watch, the future will be bright.
I am Gabrielle Slaughter. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the lead program manager, HBCU strategist at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Our Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassadors give me hope for democracy because of their willingness to put themselves on the line and make sacrifices to get the end goals necessary to have a healthy democracy. At AGF, they are devoted to our mission, and we just love being able to share space with such young, influential voices.
Hi there, my name is Hope Mathis. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the development manager here at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. The resiliency, the inherent power, and the innovation that our young people and Andrew Goodman ambassadors bring to their organizing every single day inspires me to drive forward, to step up, and to believe in the future of our democracy. To our students, I see you and I hear you. Your work gives me hope.
Hi there, my name is Mia Matthews. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Program and Communications Manager at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Today's young changemakers, especially our Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassadors on campuses, inspire me to wake up and end each day with a feeling of hope. It's easy to get discouraged with everything going on in the world today, so their passion for creating a just democracy enables me to do everything in my power to support and empower them.
Hi, my name is David Norman, and I am the Operations Associate for the Andrew Goodman Foundation. My pronouns are he, him, his. When I think of today's young people, such as our Andrew Goodman ambassadors, I think back to a Bob Marley quote where he says, "The people who are making this world worse aren't taking the day off, so how can I?" it makes it that much easier to hand off the baton to these young individuals, knowing that the future is in good hands, because they will take it to heights that we could possibly never imagine. Because that's all we can do, truly. Do our best today, and try a little bit harder tomorrow. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Valencia. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a program manager at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Young people are and have always been the drivers of change in our communities. They inspire hope in me for our future because they enact change that is making our world a better, more equitable place for everyone.
Hi, I'm Jimena Polito, and I'm an intern at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. Today's change makers, like our Andrew Goodman ambassadors, inspire me to be an active citizen and engage in political legislation that amplifies the voices of the most marginalized. Our nation's youth organizers give me hope that we can begin to build a more collaborative world, dependent on listening, understanding, and sharing ideas that guarantee equality and the preservation of democracy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Smith. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Andrew Goodman Foundation Senior Program Manager Partnership Strategist. Our Andrew Goodman ambassadors and other young change makers organize with their hearts. In a tumultuous phase of their lives and of the world, young folks are so quick to prioritize equity and love, and that gives me so much hope.
Hey everyone, my name is Mo Banks. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at the Andrew Goodman Foundation. And like so many of my coworkers have mentioned before, I can't help but feel hopeful for our future when I know what young people are organizing to do right now. Young people, just like our Andrew Goodman ambassadors, who are organizing on their college campuses, in their local communities, and at the national scale. Can't wait to see what young people continue to do to move our country forward to a more inclusive democracy.
Thank you all so much. Wow, watching our staff all in a video always makes me a little bit emotional, but I'm not going to be emotional right now. We just really love the work that we do, and we love recognizing our incredible community. Speaking of, we are now moving on to the Hidden Heroes portion of our conference. Hidden Heroes is an award ceremony that started here at the Andrew Goodman Foundation to recognize exceptional Vote Everywhere ambassadors, Puff and Democracy fellows, and community members for their devotion to the Andrew Goodman Foundation to make young voices and votes a powerful force in democracy. The following recipients have demonstrated an outstanding commitment to expanding civic engagement and defending democracy on their campuses and in their surrounding communities. The awardees have distinguished themselves amongst a pool of over 100 Vote Everywhere ambassadors and Puff and Democracy fellows from across the country, doing work like registering voters, getting the vote out, removing barriers for student voters that they face on campus. And as a part of this work, we are so excited to be able to uplift the incredible people who make up our community and make what we do feel worthwhile. So without further ado, I'm so excited to pass it over to Gabrielle Slaughter, who is going to walk us through this part of our ceremony. Or rather, maybe going to someone else.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute. But hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hidden Heroes Award ceremony. Everyone can hear me, correct? Yes, okay. So first we're gonna begin with our 2022 Ambassador Honoree Award, which will be presented by Kaylee.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Hidden Heroes Award ceremony. I am proud to announce the Andrew Goodman Ambassador Honoree. This category is awarded to our Andrew Goodman ambassadors who are integral pillars of leadership and service on their campus teams. These awardees display fervent enthusiasm for an inclusive democracy by expanding student voting access on their campus. They help their campus team develop innovative civic organizing strategies. And I'm thrilled to announce Samadi Tavares as the Andrew Goodman Ambassador Honoree for 2022. Samadi is a student at Pace University, where she majors in political science. On campus, Samadhi has served as an executive board member for the Political Awareness and Civic Engagement Club, a nonpartisan, politically oriented student organization devoted to engaging the student body in the political process. As an Andrew Goodman ambassador, Samadhi has inspired PACE students to actively engage with their community and learn how to combat social justice issues that they care most about. I'm most proud of Samadhi for being chosen as the Andrew Goodman Ambassador Honoree for her innovative and creative organizing, especially amidst the COVID-19 pandemic and a hybrid and often virtual campus module. She has worked to expand student voting access on her campus and has recently expanded her campus team's reach by integrating civic organizing and digital engagement strategies into their network. Samadhi, congratulations.
Okay, now we'll be presenting our next award, the HBCU Service Award. So this category is awarded to an Andrew Goodman ambassador within the foundation's HBCU cohort who shows exemplary leadership and involvement in the cohort. This student makes a significant contribution to a major project or operation on campus and performs special service to the university. And this award will be awarded to Miss Evan Gross. Evan Gross is a recent graduate from Prairie View A&M University with a BA in Communication and Media Studies and a minor in Sociology. Her passions include digital media, creative writing, music, and social justice, specifically as it relates to public health, racial equity, and voting rights. In her time as a student, she had the opportunity to work with both the Andrew Goodman Foundation as an ambassador and Campus Vote Project as a Democracy Fellow, promoting civic engagement and championing student voting rights on her campus. Currently, Evan is preparing to take the LSAT and plans to attend law school in the spring, specializing in education or health law. She looks forward to continuing to work with AGF and supporting other students advocates as an alumna. Congratulations, Evan. We're so proud of you.
Thank you. Is it okay if I say something just really quick? Well, first off, I just want to thank the Andrew Goodman Foundation for allowing me to have the opportunity to participate in the HBCU Ambassador cohort. I've had the pleasure of working with Gabby and previously Christina, and as well as meeting other HBCU representatives. And I'm so glad that this program exists. I think HBCUs are going to be integral in making sure that marginalized communities across this country are able to have their voices heard when it comes to voting and proper representation in their local, state, and federal elections. And I hope that we can continue to act as community centers and help marginalized communities educate themselves on civic engagement and become more involved at all levels of government.
All right, thank you, Evan. Congratulations. I am thrilled to announce the next award, the Rising Star Award. This award goes to an Andrew Goodman ambassador who is a first or second year student and exhibits the qualities of an ambassador honoree earlier in their student career. And I'm very, very proud to give this award to Sam Robson. Sam is an Andrew Goodman ambassador at the University of Alabama and a Return My Vote consultant and project assistant. While studying political science and philosophy, Sam spent much of this year applying for and carrying out a grant to establish a voting rights restoration clinic for Alabamans with prior felony convictions. This project exemplifies how to leverage the resources and people power of higher education institutions to make civic engagement more equitable for all. And Sam's leadership is much like that of Andy, James Earl, and Michael. When Sam first told me about this massive voting rights restoration project, I was totally blown away. It takes tremendous work to mobilize voters on such an enormous campus like Alabama's, but Sam saw a bigger need beyond the campus community and recognized how he and his peers could fit in. And as we've been discussing today, our legacy lies not in voter engagement generally, but specifically in registering poor Black voters who were being systematically disenfranchised. And Alabamans with past felony convictions have also been strategically deprived of their right to vote. And the Return My Vote project truly embodies and continues what Freedom Summer volunteers and activists set out to do. So thank you, Sam, and I'll pass it over to you if you'd like to say anything.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I'd just like to thank the AGF board and staff, as well as my campus champion, Dr. Richard Fording, as well as Dory Miles. None of this work could have happened without her, as well as Greater Birmingham Ministries, as well as the Blackburn Institute, which helped us with our initial run of this project. I could not have done this without any of y'all. I'm super new to this work. And it's just really incredible to be here and be recognized this way. So thank you so much. And I also just want to give my sincere gratitude to the countless student advocates, past and present, who have made this work today possible.
Okay, the next award that we'll be presenting is Andrew Goodman Ambassador of the Year. This is a huge award. This category is awarded to an Andrew Goodman Ambassador who demonstrates strong leadership and dedication to nonpartisan civic engagement. The awardee plays a key role in the creation and implementation of innovative projects that led to significant progress in voter engagement on their campus. They display a deep dedication to social justice, diversity, and inclusion that activates and mobilizes diverse communities on their campus and beyond. And this award will be awarded to the lovely Miss Christina Williams. Christina Williams is a recent magna cum laude graduate of Clark Atlanta University, where she obtained a BA in political science. This fall, she will enter Harvard Law School. Yes, you heard that right. Harvard Law School to pursue a JD and fulfill her aspirations of utilizing the law as a tool to defend the civil rights and liberties of marginalized communities. Christina is a leader in the student civic engagement and social action space with extensive experience serving in various elected undergraduate student government positions, as well as founding and presiding over several campus clubs and initiatives, including CAU Votes. Currently, Christina is a social impact fellow at Values Partnerships, the nation's largest Black-owned social impact agency. She has also gained experience through fellowships and internships with several nationally recognized civic organizations and has been referenced by a number of media outlets. I would also like to add that Christina was instrumental in creating the CAU Votes Coalition on campus and has just left a footprint for students to come after her and just create a better space on campus for civic engagement. So thank you, Christina, and congratulations. We are so proud of you and glad that you chose us to be a part of your journey.
Okay, I guess that's me. Hello, everyone. Thank you for reading that full bio. You did not have to do that. But really, thank you to the Andrew Goodman Foundation, my campus champion, Dr. Terry Platt, who is just as amazing, honestly, even more. And for all the other partners and organizations that I've worked with in this work, I really appreciate it. I couldn't have gotten any of that done without you all. And I look forward to continuing this work in a new environment and continuing to partner with the Andrew Goodman Foundation.
Next, I'm proud to present the Andrew Goodman Campus Champion of the Year. This category is awarded to an Andrew Goodman Campus Champion who creates and supports pathways of engagement between university administration and the student body at their campus. Nurturing the growth and development of their ambassadors, the awardee uplifts the voices of their campus team by using their resources and networks to accomplish institutional and organizational goals. They lead by example. Seen in all facets of their work, their passion for youth voter engagement is palpable. I'm thrilled to announce Dr. Carolyn Goodman as our Andrew Goodman Campus Champion of the Year. Dr. Goodman is a director of Carrie Chapman Catt Center for Women in Politics and a professor of political science at Iowa State University. Under Goodman's leadership, the culture of civic engagement on Iowa State University's campus has dramatically improved. She's led her students in voter engagement activities, including highly organized, effective, and innovative institutionalization projects. Her innovative spirit and passion for social change is seen in the partnership between the Catt Center, Department of Political Science, and the Student Innovation Center on her campus. Dr. Goodman also co-organizes the Big 12 Votes Challenge, an all-in campus democracy challenge aimed at creating environments that value civic learning, engage students in thoughtful ways, and remove barriers to voter participation. Dr. Goodman is truly a champion of voter engagement and democratic participation. Her impact on her campus is truly profound.
Thank you, Kaylee, and thank you to the Andrew Goodman Foundation for this award. I'm humbled by it because I know that other campus champions are doing absolutely amazing work, and the other ambassadors are really inspiring and work very hard as well. And I know too that we could not do what we do on our campuses without the support, the resources, financial and intellectual resources from the Andrew Goodman Foundation. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart.
All right, I am very excited to announce this next one, the Andrew Goodman Campus Team of the Year. This category is awarded to an Andrew Goodman campus team that shows exemplary synergy in the creation of their campus action plan and execution of their civic engagement goals. This campus team works together as an unbreakable unit to leverage their personal talents and interests towards the common goal of a more representative democracy. This campus team shares a strategic vision for growth and change and an expert ability to motivate and execute large projects as a cohesive unit. And continuing with the HBCU Excellence of the Night, I'm so happy to give this award to our team at Alabama A&M University, our wonderful campus champion, Ms. Monica Clark, and our two newly graduated ambassadors, who we will miss dearly, Austin Smith and Amaya Reardon. This Alabama A&M team truly is an unbreakable unit and has been a force together for a while now. They've also made sure that the legacy of Andrew Goodman, James Earl Cheney, and Michael Schwerner and the larger civil rights movement stays at the heart of their work. They've earned this award with their ability to execute the many moving parts of their action plan, from voter registration class visits, parades to the polls, visibility at athletic events, effective partnerships with residential life and student government, and everything under the sun, and all while connecting deeply to the local history of Black-led organizing and civic engagement movements. I particularly want to highlight their semesterly civic weeks, which get me really excited. They've proven that it's possible and essential to create a culture of civic engagement and activism on campus in every semester, not just in major election years. This academic year, between major elections when energy often fades a bit, the team made sure to keep the civic energy up, hosting pep rallies, film screenings, discussions, lock-ins, parties on the quad, a visit to the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery with something like 78 of their peers, and a campus recreation of the 1965 Selma March. We are all constantly inspired by their work and talking about it all the time. So congratulations, Ms. Clark, Austin, and Amaya, and I will turn it over to you, Austin.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thank you so much for the award. I just want to really highlight Mrs. Clark for all of her work. She really inspires myself, and I know I can speak for myself and Amaya. We're just so honored to really have Ms. Clark as our guide, and she picked us up both of our sophomore years in college, and we are really just excited to have done the work that she had tasked us with. We are just so honored for the award, and hopefully we can continue the good work, and we just thank everyone for just this honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin, and thank you to all of our hidden heroes. We are so proud of the incredible work of our community, and while we would love to recognize every single one, we're so excited to have been able to recognize a handful of incredible folks that make up this AGF community. The reason why we call this ceremony Hidden Heroes is because oftentimes y'all do work that is very rarely recognized, and we are so honored to be able to take a moment of our time to recognize the incredible work that you do and to let you know that it's not hidden to us. We hope that you feel celebrated, and we are so proud that you are a part of our community. And with that, I'm so happy to pass it on to Robert Masters, who is the chairman of the Andrew Goodman Foundation Board, and who was a pivotal part of the Freedom Summer movement back in 1964. And we are so honored to have you be a part of our legacy. How are you doing, Robert?
Oh, doing great. This is an inspiring evening. I'm just really thrilled to be here. So I want to offer my congratulations to our programs team, Waboy, Caroline, Gabrielle, Kaylee, Mia, Jimena. You've done a wonderful job tonight. The Hidden Heroes Award ceremonies are one of the highlights for me of these annual events. I also want to offer my congratulations to our hidden heroes. We're all inspired by your work on behalf of our community. You're a good part of the reason we engage in this work. So as Boy said, I am Robert Masters. I'm chairman of the board of the Andrew Goodman Foundation. I've been asked to speak briefly. Trust me, it will be brief, about my connection to Freedom Summer and Andy Goodman. In 1964, I was a 19-year-old sophomore at Queens College in Queens, New York. I had transferred from Denver University. DU was at that time a very conservative college, and Denver, Colorado was a conservative city, very different from Queens College. QC was primarily a community college made up of students who were often the first in their families to go to college, as it was for me. It had a tradition of being active in civil rights activities, as well as other progressive movements. It was like a bazaar full of ideas and movements. A QC student, working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC as we called it, advertised in the student newspaper about volunteering to go to Mississippi for the summer to work on registering Black Americans to vote. I applied to join what ultimately was perhaps 700 other students, mainly from northern universities and colleges, to go into the Lion's Den. At that time, maybe 7% of the eligible Black voters were registered to vote in the entire state of Mississippi, an extreme example of voter repression, suppression, and terrorism. For the rest of the year, I attended on and off campus meetings and many training sessions, all with the goal of teaching us how bad things were in Mississippi, how dangerous it was to be Black in Mississippi, how dangerous it was to advocate for voting rights, and how dangerous it was for us to go there and stir up trouble. Good trouble, as the late Congressman and AGF advisory board member John Lewis would say. That is how the white population viewed us. We were troublemakers, outside agitators, creating unrest among what they claimed was a very happy, peaceful, and obedient Black population, completely subordinate to the white power structure. We were told we would be treated as bad, if not worse, than local Black people. A number of students responded to the ad. We started out as a group of about a dozen QC students and wound up being just Andy and me. We attended many of these meetings and training sessions together and became friends during that process. At the end of the spring semester, we were instructed to go to the Women's College of Ohio for a week of more training. The Women's College of Ohio, by the way, which you have learned tonight, turned into Miami University, which is one of our Andrew Goodman campuses today. It was great to hear from one of their ambassadors earlier, Grace. Very impressive. Anyway, Andy invited me to stay overnight in his family's apartment in Manhattan so that we could leave early the next day and go out together. The week in Ohio was amazing. Imagine being surrounded by 700 or more people, all with similar goals. I don't mean to infer that everyone had similar backgrounds or identical views, but we all believed in equality and democracy, best expressed as one person, one vote. The training was hard, often physical, as we prepared ourselves to accept a beating in a nonviolent way. Nonviolence was very heavily stressed. I didn't see much of Andy that week, only occasionally. I did see him when he was selected to go to Neshoba County with James Earl Chaney and Mickey Schwerner. He was very excited about that and was looking forward to getting to Mississippi and doing the work that we so often talked about. I saw Andy when he left the following morning saying, "I'll see you in the fall in Queens College." Of course, that never happened. You all know what happened. 2 years after Andy's murder in 1966, his parents started the Andrew Goodman Foundation. The foundation strives to preserve the legacy of the three martyrs and to build on the things they tried to accomplish. When I consider our students, are both ambassadors and voters, I think how they are the same ages as Andy and I were, full of optimism about improving society. They fight for what is right. It may not look the same as my Freedom Summer training in 1964, but you are all here for the same reasons. And tomorrow, many of you will go through trainings that will prepare you to organize for a more equitable democracy. I take great pride in the work our organization has accomplished, in our wonderful staff, our wonderful board of directors, and in our donors. Without each of you, we couldn't keep moving forward. Now I'm going to pass it to Caroline to close us out and preview tomorrow's schedule. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing your story and for reminding us why we're all here. It's always powerful to share that. And thank you to all of you for answering the call and showing up today. It is not over yet. Tomorrow is when the work really begins and we dive into the how of carrying on this immense legacy.